As a psychologist, he turned the whole of psychology upside down. He said insanity is a perfectly natural adjustment to a totally unnatural and negative environment. It's just an adjustment like anything else. If your world is irrational and insane, and you're doing your best to adjust to it, but the result is insanity, don't blame the schizoid person. Schizophrenia is an adjustment, like all mental disease, and even like crime. It's merely a symptom, so don't treat the symptom. Schizophrenia is coined by Eugene Bleuler, and it roughly translates as shattered mind, coming from the Greek schizo, to split or to divide. But remember, these psychotic states are just a compensation. They're a desperate attempt to find a sanity. And the whole human race has been doing it, not just individuals. The psychosis is globalized. Seldom realize, for example, that our most private thoughts and emotions are not actually our own. For we think in terms of languages and images which we did not invent, but which were given to us by our society. We copy emotional reactions from our parents. Society is our extended mind and body. Absolutely, he's right. Well, your name is borrowed, your religion is borrowed, your clothes are borrowed, your ideas are borrowed. Tell me what's unique. Every human being can clearly know what it is that makes them the same as everybody else. We all support the same team, we all vote the same way, we all like such and such. Very few people can tell you what really makes them unique. We belong to schools where they couldn't care less what makes you unique, unless it serves the beast, of course. Then they're very interested. Up until recent historical times, and I mean recent, agricultural age, industrial age, up until recent times, life expectancy of the average human being was between 20 and 25 years of age. So psychologically, if you have a very short physical life, then psychologically, the human being did not progress much further than what is known as the animistic or infantile phase, basically about 13-year-old teenager, at best. So therefore his world was therefore one of superstition and wild and uncontrollable emotionality and fear of the unknown. The rational apparatus, which affords us a truer reckoning of objective reality, is therefore an exceedingly recent development. And many people in today's world are just as psychologically primitive and as arrested as those rural ancestors, by the way. Hence, the rise of this evangelism and conservative politics. See, in those days it was just devils or gods. It was very easy, right? If somebody didn't take water from the well right, you burned them at the stake. Listen, some Latin American countries, it's the same story. In India, where one of my side of the family is from, they're fanatics, they're maniacs. You wear the wrong clothes, the wrong color, and they're ready to execute you. But that is a very comfortable world to just have everything in demons and gods, you see. And now it's being handed out again. The most strongly enforced of all known taboos is the taboo against knowing who and what you really are behind the mask of your apparently separate, independent, and isolated ego. The taboo against knowing who you are? You mean to tell me we're going to reach 25 years of age, voting age, working age, and marriage age, but we don't know who we all are? Wonderful. That's great. And then we turn around wondering why the world is in the state it's in. So we address this problem. That we know that there's untold cruelty from the earliest times. From James Hillman, the Canadian psychologist and friend of Carl Jung, he said that archaeology supports the view that warfare is a development of only the past 10,000 years. Oh, that's a blink of the eye, 10,000 years. Of course, it ties into research of people like myself who are saying, well, we were visited. We were genetically tampered with. And now these psychologists and even some of the scientists are starting to back that up. Because I very much believe that, believe me, these penchants for violence, they're not something that's natural to human beings at all. He goes on to say that, look, the normal round of warfare has been going on as far back as memory stretches. But during the last 5,000 or so years, 14,600 wars have been recorded. There's barely a day off before we're butchering somebody else. Schlein, who's a San Francisco scientist, top of the totem pole, has been looking into the goddess tradition and divination and what it's all about with the feminine concept. Because the old paradigms are simply not working anymore. So scientists are, not because they want to, believe me, it's because they're forced to. He says that Eve's descendants have steadily accumulated the power to destroy each other in an unholy Armageddon, and like sleepwalkers are shuffling towards a planetary ecological disaster. But how could a slight, 5-foot-tall, 2-legged animal create such sublimity and then wreak so much havoc in so minuscule an interval of Earth history? As I've always said, the question of evil is one of the most important questions that we could ever ask. It's number one on the list. Erich Fromm, the post-Neo-Freudian, says that the detailed description of the life of primitive hunters and food gatherers has shown that man, at least since he fully emerged 50,000 years ago, was most likely not the brutal, destructive, cruel being, and hence not the prototype of man the killer that we find in more developed stages of his evolution. So there's another lie out the door. Oh, well, we're violent because, that's just the way it is. It's evolution. No, it's not evolution. I'm not a person who will leave consciousness at the door. I am fully aware of all of the other obscenities that are taking place, in the name of God, in the name of religion, in the name of freedom and sovereignty. But you see, in my book, I will not leave consciousness at the door. And this is the reason. Carl Jung says that the gigantic catastrophes that threaten us today are not elemental happenings of a physical or biological order, but are psychic events. To a quite terrifying degree, we are threatened by wars and revolutions, which are nothing other than psychic epidemics. At any moment, several millions of human beings may be smitten with a new madness. And then we shall have another world war or devastating revolution. Instead of being at the mercy of wild beasts, earthquakes, landslides, and inundations, modern man is battered by the elemental forces of his own psyche. The most toxic and unworked people just happen to be in power. So we've just diagnosed them. They just happen to be the ones most infected by the epidemic, and they're walking loose and hoping that you'll catch it too. But they're not what we first think that they are. They're not just mad politicians, whatever. These are people who have an epidemic. And they happen to always rule the societies because we let them. We permit it to happen. And the politicians, they know how to manipulate that. We want the easy way out, and they have the pulse on the psyche, and they know how to help us with that kind of false exorcism. They're experts at it. I've always maintained in my work that if you don't know the motives of your enemy, then don't go into fight. You may know your motives, but if you don't know what makes them tick, we have zero knowledge of them. I've said it in the book and I've said it in many talks. They have incredible knowledge of us. We don't even know what makes them tick. It's time to start finding out. That's like arming up to go and fight, find a tiger to shoot, but you don't have a faintest idea. In your mind, the tiger is a pink animal that flies in the sky. You don't know it's a thing with, inch-long razor-sharp teeth that's going to tear you limb from limb and can smell you coming 10 miles away. What good is it then you fighting the tiger? You're dead and buried and eaten is what's going to happen to you. Which is what has been happening to the brothers and sisters who've been trying to stand up against these leviathans, unfortunately. As I said, when we are not integrated, strong and healthy psychologically, we invariably turn to external representatives. The parents, the politicians, the teachers, the evangelists, the heroes, the authority figures, the establishment representatives, whoever. And all manner of horrors have arisen because we do this. So yes, our world is full of horror and genocide and mayhem. Let's start discovering why. There's one other important psychological complex that we need to look at, and that's called identification. And we all do it. You have to identify with your heroes and things, otherwise, you couldn't survive. Identification is that you identify with your parents and the good side of, your heroes and so on and so forth. So it's a natural, healthy drive. But again, it's taken to extremes in certain situations. The extreme of it is known as the identification with the object of one's hate. The identification with the object of one's hate? Meaning you hate something, but you identify with it? Why would you do that? Now, when states and people are unhealthy and not sovereign, they give their power away to demagogues and champions who possess the ability to lead them anywhere. The ensslave has an ambivalent relationship with the master. He may despise the master, but he may also envy him and need his attention and affection, because we do need. We are in dependence. You are a slave of the approval and the needs of others, and if you don't have it, look what happens to you. Now, the slave has an inferiority complex and does not think or act for himself. In fact, he prefers that others do the thinking for him. In return for this, he offers service, work, and above all, obedience.